So tonight I wanted to do a kind of a review and overview, and then I have a couple of texts and things that I wanted to share with you about things that are coming up and I think that you would like. It may be that we're going to dabble in some of the languages we've already had and a little bit of an overview. So I'm going to start off with sharing the screen to our website. And just so that you know, after the mini mester, whatever we're calling this is, because it's been a mini mess, or it could be considered, but after it's done, we will probably be opening these pages up so that other people could see them too. That includes the videos, and you got first dibs on all of this, on being able to ask questions and things. But so we're on the page where it's the Jewish Way with Words page, our page, and I'm going to go to the review section, which is the bottom one. And I wanted to share with you, ever since shortly after I wrote my dissertation. Oh, and by the way, I found something really cool. I didn't put on, wait, no, I did. I put it up here, watch. In the Judaico-Romanesco section, I found, and I kept them in black. I didn't change them so you could see it. I found two amazing videos that I never expected to find. I think that I told you my dissertation was in the Jewish dialect of Rome. You could read the dissertation. Some people did read their dissertation, but the Jewish dialect of Rome was experiencing a resurgence because there was this group of young adults who started to do plays, do dramatic presentations, and use Judaico-Romanesco as in the play. And they thought it was going to have a limited kind of a run, but in the end, they wound up continuing to do the show because even the non-Jews wanted to hear it. And some of it is because the Romanesco that you hear, the Roman dialect of Italian, in the Judaico-Romanesco is closer to what people remembered of the Romanesco that their nonni, their grandparents, said. So what I wanted to show you that I found, and I threw it in the Judaico-Romanesco section, is these two videos. There's no subtitles to them. So if you know some Italian, that'll help. If you don't, just have fun with it. I don't know. But the commedia, the comedy that I had done my dissertation on, most dialects in the world are, and this was from the early 1980s, most dialects in the world, as I mentioned, were flattening out for a lot of important reasons that I think we're going to hear about today. But it turned out that because of this video, the comedy, the presentation, the play, there was a resurgence of using the dialect. The Jews were using it, some of the non-Jews were using it. So for those of you who didn't get to see the dissertation, it's right here in the Judaico-Romanesco section. The dissertation is here, and then I did a highlighted view over here. Well, let me see if I can turn this into a little pointer again. We can maybe do that. Yeah. So the dissertation is here. We're in the Judaico-Romanesco section. I'm going to point out that I did lovely things for you. If you jump here and you go to this, it will jump you directly to Judaico-Romanesco. At the bottom of each section, there's a green thing that says go to the top of the page, and then you can get to there, and then you can go to another section. But anyway, in Judaico-Romanesco, the ones that are still the videos, these videos, before you get to the class video, it says, you can see, and it looks like someone took a handheld camera and took a recording of the whole play, and you can see it. No subtitles, but it's there. And it was called Purio Rederio, se fosse it was called something like, I would laugh too if this insanity wasn't mine. That's kind of the rough translation of it. But then apparently another group did this one called Non è Paghetto, which is a bunch of older people, not the young adults, but older people. I was kind of hoping that maybe some of those people who were young adults were still doing were now old adults and did it, but it's not the same group. And they did a show also. And this is kind of a trailer that they made for that show. And you can listen to it, especially if you don't know some Italian, you'll love hearing it. And then I liked some of the comments saying, now that's real Romanesco and things like that. So I don't think you're going to have too many English speaking people who were watching these, but I was extremely excited to find those, and they're there. So now if we come down to here, what I started to say was shortly after I did my dissertation, and one of the places that was a source for me to find the articles and the books that I needed was this woman, Sarah Benor, who works at the Hebrew Union College and is a specialist in Jewish languages. In fact, if we go back to the top of the page and we look at about Jewish languages, the jewishlanguages.org, that's her website. She spent her lifetime now collecting everything that she can about Jewish languages and understanding them and making sure that they don't die. So I would very much like you to watch a short video that she does a presentation. There's one where she does, and it's also not very long, but there's another one that she does an overview of Jewish languages in general. But I thought that this one spoke to what we've been doing even more. So this is the link to it at the YouTube site. I'm going to pause and let it buffer for a second. I'm going to make it big, and I should have, hold on, I said pause. Tell me if this is sufficient, or if you need, there is a way for me, I'm popping up the volume so you can control volume for yourself. There is a way for me to share this that is enhanced for sharing video. But if this looks okay, and I shared the link with you, then I'm going to leave it like this. It's 13 minutes. I didn't set it to go fast, I don't think. And it already has closed captions on it. I mean, subtitles.
How many of you have heard of a language called Yiddish? Okay, looks like almost everyone raised their hand. How many of you have heard of a language called Ladino? Again, almost everyone has raised their hand. How many of you have heard of a language called Judeo-Malayalam? Nobody. Well, I was the same way. When I was in college, I had only heard of Yiddish and Ladino as the two diaspora Jewish languages. And one day I was sitting in the library reading an assignment for a class on Romance languages when I saw mentions of two additional Jewish languages, Judeo-Italian and Judeo-Portuguese. And I was blown away. I closed the book and I said, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to study Jewish languages. So I started to do some reading, and I learned that when the Jews left the land of Israel, they went to North Africa, Europe, Asia, and even southern India, where Judeo-Malayalam is spoken. And they picked up the local languages, but they Judaified them. They spoke Jewish versions, Judeo-French, Judeo-Greek, Judeo-Tajik, Judeo-Persian, etc., etc. Wherever they lived, they spoke a Jewish version of the local language. And Yiddish and Ladino were actually exceptions in the history of the diaspora because they were maintained for centuries away from their lands of origin. As I continued to do this reading, I realized that there was also a trend in the research on Jewish languages that understood that this is the end of a long-lasting phenomenon. A linguist wrote, widespread shifts to non-Jewish languages throughout the world and to revived spoken Hebrew in Israel are now resulting in the obsolescence of contemporary Jewish languages and putting an end to 2,600 years of Jewish language creation. Similarly, Leon Wieseltier wrote, the American Jewish community is the first great community in the history of our people that believes that it can receive, develop, and perpetuate the Jewish tradition, not in a Jewish language. Now, this made me sad, this notion that we are not continuing the long-lasting history of our people. And it also just didn't seem quite right to me because I went to Columbia University where there are a lot of Orthodox students, and I was observing the students around me speaking what didn't quite sound like English. Here's an example. This was from a roommate of mine, a modern Orthodox woman. She said, we do all that shtick to be misameach, the chatan and kala. Now, is this an English sentence? People who don't know the Yiddish words, the Hebrew words, and even this, what's called a periphrastic construction, to be misameach somebody, wouldn't understand this sentence. So I say it's not just English, it's Jewish English. Here's another one. I heard this from a Chabad young man in Northern California. Whenever you're shaykh, then you can be an aid. Whenever you're not, you're not. So why does Rashi say That's because Dina de Malchusa Dina. It's because they're, even if not Dina de Malchusa Dina, Rashi says later, because Al Din Hu Nitztavu B'nei Nayach. The Gayim are shaykh to dinim, they're not shaykh to gittin. That's why it's good. Is that English? Again, it's Jewish English. Not only do we have Yiddish words, Hebrew words, Aramaic phrases, but we also have the chanting intonation, and we have the release of word final T and the devoicing of final D, the gut instead of good. So now you might be saying, well, this is just an Orthodox thing. It's just Orthodox Jews who speak Jewish English, and the rest of us just speak English. Well, here's something that I saw written by a Reform rabbi. She wrote, L'shem chinuch, I am leading a mock Seder tomorrow for our basic Judaism class. I'm wondering if anyone out there has already created an essence of Haggadah that is more explanatory than halachic. Thanks in advance for anything you might send my way. I'll teach it all b'shem omro, omra. So again, filled with Hebrew words, even though it's an English sentence. And my daughter brought home this newsletter from her conservative Jewish day school in Los Angeles. Kita Aleph finished the letter Chet this week. We enjoyed singing Hanukkah songs with Mora Debbie and reciting the brachot when lighting the candles. 1C loves Parashat HaShavua. They are always so curious to know what will happen next in the Torah. So now you might be thinking, well, this is just a religious thing. It's just in educational settings. Well, here's another one from an educational setting, but from a secular Jewish community called the Sholem community in Los Angeles. A shout out from Vav class Lehrer Mike to anyone who has a copy of Mouse. So again, they're using Vav and Lehrer. They're using, instead of Hebrew words, this time they're using Yiddish words to distinguish themselves from other Jews and from other Americans. So we see that this is a very common phenomenon. Jews of diverse backgrounds speak and write English with distinctive features, especially words from Hebrew and Yiddish. We use language to show others not only that we're Jews, but also that we're a certain type of Jews. So whether we are Ashkenazi or Sephardi, queer or Southern or eco-Jews or all of the above, we use language to show that we are connected with certain communities. Not only the words that we use, but even the types of letters that we use to show who we are. Now, of course, it's not just language that we use to do this. It's also music and dance and food and clothing and so many other things. But I personally like to focus on language because it's ubiquitous. You can't get away from it. Whenever you open your mouth, or even when you choose to remain silent, you are using language to show that you align with some people and distinguish yourself from others. So with this in mind, I decided to do a little bit more research about whether Jews do actually speak a Jewish language. And so I looked at a number of other diaspora Jewish languages throughout history, and I wanted to see how American Jewish English compares to those. Like other Jewish languages, we have a non-Jewish base language, in this case, English. We have a Hebrew and Aramaic component. We have influences from a previous Jewish language, in this case, for the most part, Yiddish. And we have a number of other distinctive features, including distinctive ways of pronouncing vowels, especially in some Orthodox communities. And now, if anyone tells you that you interrupt too much, just tell them, I'm not interrupting, I'm overlapping. We do have other distinctive features in our discourse style. In addition, there is another feature common among Jewish languages around the world that American Jews do not share, and that is a Hebrew writing system. Jewish languages throughout history have written their language in Hebrew letters. For example, this is a translation of Bereshit, the beginning of the Torah, into Judeo-Persian on the right. And this is a translation into Aramaic and Judeo-Arabic, all using Hebrew letters. This one is Yiddish, in Onheb, Hotgot, Bashafin, etc., all in Hebrew letters. We don't do this in English. We don't write, my name is with a mem and two yod, right? We don't do that in English, but we do sometimes write English and insert Hebrew words into the English. especially in educational settings, but also sometimes, especially in the Orthodox world, in signs, in notes, and that kind of thing. We also do this when we want to show our political orientation. If we have an Obama bumper sticker or a Romney button, we are showing that we are Obama supporters or Romney supporters, but we're also showing that we are learned Jews. When we want to show our college colors, that one says Michigan. When we want to show that we are sports fans, whether you're a Yankees fan or a Mets fan, there's always a Hebrew shirt or hat for you. So now some people say that because contemporary Jews don't write their languages in Hebrew letters, that their languages don't count as Jewish languages. And some say that because Jewish English is not as distinct as Yiddish and Ladino, that it doesn't count as a Jewish language. And my response to that is that we need a new understanding of Jewish languages. My understanding is that Jews tend to speak the local language with the selective use of a repertoire of distinctive features. And Yiddish and Ladino are exceptions in the history of Jewish languages because they were maintained for centuries away from their lands of origin. So with this new understanding, we can talk about a continuum of linguistic distinctiveness. Some Jewish languages are very, very similar to the local non-Jewish languages. Some are extremely distinct and some are in the middle. So where do American Jews fall along this continuum? All over it. On the least distinct side, we have many secular Jews who speak English exactly like their non-Jewish friends and neighbors, with maybe the addition of a few Yiddish words here and there, like bris, yortzeit candle, and that kind of thing. And then we have religious non-Orthodox Jews who do speak English just like their non-Jewish friends and neighbors, but also throw in many Hebrew and Yiddish words, especially in-group settings. And then we have Orthodox Jews who use a number of Yiddish and Hebrew words and also grammatical influences from Yiddish and distinctive ways of pronouncing vowels and consonants and other distinctive features. And finally, akin to Yiddish and Ladino in Slavic and Balkan lands, we have Hasidic Yiddish, which is maintained as a very separate language from the English language of the majority of Americans. So my answer is yes, American Jews do speak a Jewish language. And Jews around the world also speak contemporary Jewish languages throughout Europe, Latin America, and the former British Empire. So my message to you is that language connects us to other Jews, our local Jewish community, our world Jewish community, and our historical Jewish community. And as you continue throughout this conference and throughout other Jewish events, I want you to keep your ear out for how American Jews speak Jewish English and how they do this in a way that presents them not only as Jews, but also as certain types of Jews. And my assignment for you is to go to my website, the Jewish English Lexicon, and see a database of Hebrew and Yiddish and Ladino and other distinctive words that American Jews use, and also to add to it, to edit the entries that are there. It's a Wikipedia style site, and you can see a lot of these words and who uses them, whether they're used by camp Jews or organizational Jews or Orthodox Jews or Sephardic Jews, all different types of Jews. And I hope that this talk has given you a new perspective on Jewish languages and shown that American Jews do in fact have a lot in common with our ancestors throughout history. Thank you.
I like those descriptions. I appreciate it. And as I said, she's got another, there was another lecture that she gave that was supposed to be more of an overview, but I really like this one. I felt like there were a lot of words and things that we can relate to that and other things they couldn't. And she's got some longer lectures you can listen to as well. I wanted to keep this something that it could be bite-sized enough that we could listen to it. And I tried, as you could tell, there was one time at least that I tried to emulate some of the kinds of things that she was saying, that you look at a calendar and you're using half Hebrew words and half whatever, like things like that. So any thoughts or comments, questions for her on this one? Are you ready to move on? I got stuff. I got lots of stuff. It's our last one. I wanted to show you, and I have a few others. There's a Dick and Jane book in Yiddish, in a really simple Yiddish. That's really fun. There's one about the President Bush family in Yiddish, in simple Yiddish. That's really funny. There's just cute, funny, not like it's very respectful, funny. It's fun. I wanted to show you just a few things that I realized that I had hanging around for Yiddish that I thought you'd appreciate. Since Bentley is always participating, I wanted to show this book is called Yiddish for Dogs. I'm going to spotlight me for here. So I wanted to show you the Yiddish for Dogs. It says chutzpah, feh, kibbutz, and more. Every word your canine needs to know. I have a friend who wants to know if your dog is a schmendrick. Heel schmeal, these dogs don't listen. Anyway, I had a friend who the family would put the food out in their bowl and they would say treif. And, dogs are hungry. They want to eat when there's food there, and they wouldn't eat from the bowl until they said, oh, it's kosher. And then you start eating. I love that about that dog. I've got one that's a kind of a comic book version of Yiddish for everyone. And it's got things like states of being, and this one says, can you see, one man's dreck is another man's treasure? So you can tell what the things mean. Leslie Michelle Manas, it says. I had one that I've had for a really long time called Instant Yiddish. And you get, it's kind of a little dictionary of words. I have a complete idiot's guide to Yiddish. And I did tell you, by the way, that Duolingo now teaches Yiddish. And then the godfather of teaching is The Joys of Yiddish by Leo Roston. And it's stories, it's a dictionary, but every entry has long explanation, good descriptions, great stories, explanation. But I also have Hooray for Yiddish by Leo Roston, a book about English. And actually, there was a book that that I had, I think it's all the way over there. So that's some Yiddish stuff that I wanted to share, just show you about Yiddish. I bet that there's a lot of words that each of you knows. We are trying to share some more things, some expressions. Even when you say them in English, they're kind of fun. Anyway, some of those things. I wanted to share a few other things. There's a book that I have called The Word. And I thought I had it sitting close enough that I could show it to you. If you saw My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and the father in that story said that the origin of every word is Greek, and he figures out somehow to tap dance around any word at all that you want to share. My favorite scene was when he's driving the daughter around, and one of the daughter's friends is Japanese and says, well, what about kimono? Because it's a Japanese word. How is the origin of this Japanese word going to be Greek? And he figures out this tap dance around it so he can show that the origin of the word kimono is actually Greek. That was kind of crazy. But I find myself doing that. And I was very happy to see that there was a book called The Word, which is a dictionary of English words that, and I'll have to find it, and I'm embarrassed to say I don't know the author's name offhand, but he has a dictionary of English words that he claims has Hebrew origins. And I want to show you the kinds of stuff that blow me away, that I love. I can't say that they're not true. Let me show you this one, for example. I'm going to do a whiteboard here where I'm going to draw. I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to move you guys over here, come take you out of the way. And I'm going to draw on this. Give you So this word, and this, we just finished our last letters in one of our classes. So that's a P. And this is a R. And this is an O. And this is a T. Okay. And that word perot means fruit. It's a plural of fruit. But what I want to show you is this. I'm going to take away the vowels, which includes this thing. And I want you to just look at what's left there. And what's left there is the, come on, it's still an eraser. All right. This, the pei is also a fa. Without the dot, it's a fa. And the resh and the o can sometimes be an u. So if instead of perot, you looked at it as if this is a fa, I'll put new vowels down for you. And instead of it being a pei, it's a fa root. That's fruit. See what I did there? Perot turned into fruit. Is that true? That's the origin of the word fruit? I can't tell you it isn't. And now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. But I love this. And the whole book has, and it's a thick book, and it's got a ton of those things. So every once in a while, that's the kind of book I like to keep like on my nightstand, and just, I'm having a bad day and I open it up and I look at these words and it just cracks me up and it makes me go, I kind of love that. All right, so I'm going to clear my drawings and stop the share for this one, bring you back to where you belong. Okay, there you are. And then the other thing that I wanted to share with you today, which you may be able to tell from what I put on the on our page, was one of the holidays that's coming up in our next mini-mester. There are two Jewish holidays coming up in our next mini-mester. One is Purim and one is Passover. And each of those lend themselves to using some Jewish words and some, if we're speaking English, some English, we can tell the story in English, and we tend to tell it in English. At least the Purim story, we can read it all in Hebrew. The story is the book of Esther. Some congregations will read it only in Hebrew. Some congregations will read a little bit of each, some in Hebrew and then interspersed with English translation. And they'll be very dry and straightforward and just read what they have. And what we do, and there's a tradition even in the Talmud, in the Jewish law, that you do an over-the-top kind of, they call it a spiel, which is a show. You do a Purim kind of show and you make it something crazy, and you make it, so in the fall, in the springtime, or just before the springtime, almost every culture seems to have some kind of a holiday where you are over the top. So there's Carnival and there's Mardi Gras and there's Purim and there's things like that where you often get dressed up in costume. You don't show off who you really are. You become an alter ego, whether it's really the person you want to be or if it's just not having to be who you are. So it could be something crazy like that. I'll give you one of my favorite stories is, so let me tell you some things about Purim. Purim is coming up in just a few weeks. Some of the laws about Purim is you're supposed to get so happy that you can't tell the difference between, it's called Ad Lo Yada, and the parades are called Ad Lo Yada, which means until you don't know. You're not supposed to know the difference between cursing Haman, boo, and blessing Mordechai. And sometimes the only way to get that kind of happy involves imbibing something. But you also dress up in costumes. The name Esther from the book of Esther, it may have been her Persian name, but in Hebrew, the name means to hide yourself, to hide. And she hid her identity and then was able to save the Jewish people. And then so Purim is one of the times where in the Talmud, it says that men can wear clothes pertaining to a woman and women can wear clothes pertaining to a man, that it is not discouraged. It's not that it's specifically encouraged, but you are supposed to hide who you are. And so I was on a kibbutz, and you may have heard me tell this story. I was on a kibbutz where starting at December, starting at Hanukkah, the men didn't shave. And then for Purim, they shaved off half of their face. And so on one half, they put makeup as if they were a woman. And on the other half, they had their beard shaped to be a man. So they would play two parts in the story. So with very few people, they were able to act out the whole story, because there's Queen Vashti, there's Achashverosh, there's Haman, there's Mordechai, there's Esther, there's guards and things like that. But you can be more than one person. And it was, like wonderful. It was really cool. It was one of the most fun times I've had listening to Purim. I was 18, 19 at the time. So since then, I've had some other crazy Purim experiences, including the ones that I do. For example, last year, the one we did was it was a pandemic-based one. So instead of being Queen Vashti, Queen Esther, her name was Queen Feister, and she looked like a hypodermic needle, because she was, saved the day by being the I don't know. It was just Mordechai was Maskachai, King. And I didn't do this by myself. I didn't want to do a pandemic one. And the kids, I usually write it with the Hebrew classes, and the kids said that they thought we should. And it took a little brainstorming before I was convinced. But King Achashverosh. So the device that listens to you when you say the name, and the name sounds like Lexi's name, that I'm not going to say her whole name because it makes the device go crazy. But that was the narrator. And so trying to get that to say Achashverosh was impossible. I tried all kinds of things. So finally, the kids decided we were going to call the king, instead, we're going to call the king toilet paper, because toilet paper was a very scarce and valuable commodity. And the king was very happy to be called King Toilet Paper, because that was one of the coolest things that you could be at this day. So anyway, we did this whole story, and it was crazy like that. And that, to some extent, is a little bit like how it feels to do the Jewish language thing, to speak, to use your words in ways that evoke something that people get. I'm going to tell you that one of my favorite, and some of you heard me say this, one of my all-time favorite lessons when I was teaching kids was when I would say, all right, we need to come up with a new Purim spiel. We need to come up with a new way of telling the story about Esther. What are you interested in these days? And we decided to do the Marvel universe. So any of the characters from the Marvel universe could become the characters in the Esther story. So we pretend, for example, that you pick a bad guy and he gets to be Haman, but the bad guy in the Marvel universe has a whole personality. And maybe that personality doesn't match the bad guy in the Esther story. So I was listening to them argue. It was the coolest thing. Argue about, oh, no. You know who should be Haman? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, no, that can't work, because it was so cool, because it means that they knew the Marvel universe, which they knew. They'd been watching these movies, but they knew the Esther story so well that they could argue about who got to be what in this story. I loved those classes when we got to do that. And how are we going to best represent them? So we did a Star Wars version where they got to be the Star Wars characters, like a Princess Leia got to be Queen Esther, but it was using Princess Leia's personality, but to tell the story as if she were Esther. And it was, we have a lot of fun with these things. They're great. You should watch them. Go to the B'nai Zion video channel and watch or go to, I could show you another way of doing this. I really think you should watch these, because they're all my favorite things. If we go to screen one and you go to holidays and you go to Purim, which is right here in the middle, and you click on Purim until it goes. So all the Purim spiels, we had a Grog or Not game that we made. Last year was the Purim spiel. There's King Maskachai and Queen Feister. That's the whole service. It was also my birthday weekend, I think. So I was wearing my birthday hat. And because I always come in costume, always. And it's embarrassing to me that not all the grownups come in costume. When I grew up, the grownups would come in costume too to the service. And now, like, they're too cool. One year I tricked them into coming in costume. I said that they had to wear their favorite sports colors. So they're always going to dress in their favorite sports colors anyway, even if it's not a thing. So they wore their favorite sports. And I said, oh, you could even come in your opposing team's sports colors so that you're incognito. So you're, not wearing, anyway, these were, some that I did, the kids did. We had one in simple Hebrew that was made with Little Big Planet. Those are from before. I am hoping that, I never know if we're going to pull off the ones that I have in mind for this year. But if you go to holidays and you go to Purim, you can get there. I'm going to come back to where we were because I wanted to share this. So we're here, we're going back to Way with Words, and I wanted to share with you. So that's one holiday that's coming up that to me, plus there's in Judaico-Romanesco, if you read one of my sources of information about people who still use the dialect, believe it or not, was a cookbook. There's an Italian Jewish woman named Ada Boni, and she writes cookbooks about Jewish cooking, Jewish Italian cooking. And in it, she tells these wonderful stories. I think I mentioned this. She tells wonderful stories about what it was like to live in Italy outside of Jerusalem during, and use these words, and she interspersed with a lot of words. But she told me this. She told me in the book, it says, there's an expression, rallegrete makom kepurime, which means rejoice, O makom, which is often the source of God or the place of God or a throne of God. And in this case, it winds up being the toilet. It's a euphemism for toilet. The throne of God is the euphemism is a toilet. So it says, rallegrete makome, rejoice, O toilet, because it's Purim, but it's also kind of throne. So, and it was from Judaico-Romanesco. And that's a Purim thing. And then I wanted to share with you about Passover. So Passover is coming in April. April 15th actually is the first Seder. It's also Good Friday. It's also tax day. It's a pack day. Yes, I will be stressed. You know I will. There's no way to avoid it. So I wanted to share a couple of things with you about Passover. I have this book. And I am not, let me do this again. Am I still, I'm still spotlighted. Can you still see me spotlighted? All right, so this book is called 300 Ways to Ask the Four Questions. One of the core things that happens, and there's a link on our page here. The link is here that, whoops, oh, please tell me, come on. Okay, no. So there's a link here, 300 Ways to Ask the Four Questions. There's my thing. The homepage is here, but I wanted to show you samples and parodies on this page. This has an amazing array of the four questions. So the four questions are, why is this night different from all other nights? Usually the youngest person asks it. Often it's done in Hebrew. But one of the cool things that's the tradition has been is that for Passover, some of the songs, wherever you are in the world, some of the things that we do will be in the local language. Even if you're in a very strict household where all of the rest of the service has to be done like this, and the whole service is like that, and it lasts hours and hours and hours because you've got a really picky grandpa who's going to do every single word. And even though he's faster than an Evelyn Woods speed reading class, even though he's faster than that, and even though Uncle George and Uncle Sidney are doing a speed reading competition, it's still going to take you hours and hours and hours to get through the Seder because of the Haggadah, which is the book that has all of the words in it, and they're going to not leave anything out. But we've been doing it anyway, where you're reading some of it in English. And when you get to the end of the Seder, there are some songs that almost everywhere you go in the world, you're going to sing the songs in another language. This is not necessarily something that you do. You will translate it usually in the four questions. You'll translate it usually in your local language. This has, you name a language, I guarantee that it's here. Let's see if we've got, and I've met this guy, he's really fun. And, we know each other well now. So there's living languages like Zulu and Ladino and Judeo or Iraqi and Ukrainian and Yiddish and Mongolian and Mayan and Egyptian hieroglyphics and Akkadian and Latin and Phoenician. There's parodies like there is a translation in Klingon. There's Hebrew semaphore. There's lawyerese, and there's like, well, I'll show you. So let's go to parodies. This is the one I wanted to share with you, but I still have one other thing that I wanted to give you. So there's a Elizabeth Browning spoof. There's parodies like Manishtana for do, re, mi from the sound of music. Do, sans yeast is matzah. Do, rare, just baked 1 week per year, though, like that. 4 questions is a limerick. 4 manishtana in haiku. In lolcat, remember I has cheeseburger. That's lolcat, if you know what that is. And here it is. Java programming language, JavaScript. I like this one, the PCS, the picture communication symbols. When you have someone who has problems with language things, or we had a woman who had a stroke here who she had like a tablet that she could point to things to say she wanted juice and stuff. So it's right here. SQL, SMS, like if you're texting it. As a matter of fact, there's some cool versions now that are, I bet it's here. There's cool versions on Facebook, like in Facebook Ease and things like that, different ones. Anyway, I do anything. Why on Seder night are things just not quite right? The changes are just slight this night. You could keep going. I love parodies. Here on the street where you live, parody, things like that. So they've got tonight, it's not just any night. Tonight will we eat no bread at all. And it's fun. Translations, Valley Girl, 4 questions, Shakespearean. How about Morse code? Marathi, Thai, because it looks so beautiful in those things. Theodore Bickel's chant in the book, he does it in Yiddish. So you get all of those things. And then I want to go back to, let's see if we can get there faster this way or not. So I thought that was fun. But the other thing that happens is that any place you go, like in Italian, even if we did the whole service in Hebrew with an Italian Jewish melody, when you get to the end, there's a couple of songs that are traditionally sung everywhere you go. One is about who knows one, and it's kind of a language game. So you say, in English, we would sing, who knows one? I know one. One is God in heaven and on earth. Who knows two? I know two. 2 are the tablets of the covenant. 1 is God in heaven and on earth. So then it becomes a rhyming song. I mean, a remembering thing. Who knows 3? I know 3. 3 is the number of the patriarchs. 2 are the tablets of the covenant. 1 is God in heaven and on earth. But it doesn't have to be the words that they give you. You could come up with something else. So for example, the last few years that we did it, 6, according to the Hebrew, let me do it in Hebrew also. Hebrew goes like this. Echad mi yodea, echad ani yodea, echad Eloheinu, 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 sheba shamayim u'va'aretz, shnayim yodea, shnayim ani yodea, Shnei luchot habrit, the tablets of the law. Echad Eloheinu, one is God. Eloheinu, 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 Eloheinu. Sheba shamayim u'va'aretz. The same answers that you just heard in English, we're giving here. But when I do it at the congregational seders or family seders, can you think of something else? So when we get to 6, for example, 6 is supposed to be, there are 6 orders of Mishnah. And I am telling you that most of my Reformed Jewish group doesn't have a clue how many orders of the Mishnah there are, but they remember that there are 6 points on a Jewish star. So we'll throw that in instead, for example. We have a lot of fun with that. One of the things that I threw in though is here, and I don't think that this isn't exactly Judaico-Romanesco, but this is a Haggadah, which is the telling of the story. Haggadah means telling. It's a telling of the story, and this telling is in Italian. So Rabbi Toaf was the chief rabbi of Rome, and I gave you some pages that I showed you the come si prepara il seder, how you prepare the Seder plate in Italian. But then I took you to the end of the book, and you get the song that everybody in the world is going to sing in Hebrew. It may be a slightly different melody depending on where you go, but then there's Echad mi yodea, Echad ani yodea, Echad Eloheinu. Same thing I just sang for you, but they're going to sing it in Italian, and most of the time when you get to these songs at the end of the book, most of the time they're going to do it not in Hebrew. They're going to do it in their language. And so then you get to the other song that everybody does is Chad Gadya. Chad Gadya is Aramaic. It means in Aramaic, Chad is one, Echad. Gadya is Gedi, it's one little goat. And so un capreto. And I tried to find the versions that I remembered that we sang, and I tried to get Ricky to sing it for me, and I can't get him to sing it yet. We just haven't connected at the right time. I did send him some, and I said, "This isn't the way it sounded, is it?" And he says, "No, that's not the way it sounded. The words are right, the melody is wrong." But I remember going, "Uno fue, uno he, God, always was and always is," and for the who knows one, Chad Gadya, and usually, so it says. C'era un capreto che il babbo aveva comprato per 2 zuzim. So it says there was one goat, one little goat that babbo, which is daddy, aveva comprato had bought per 2 zuzim. And zuzim is the word that was how many coins it took for him to buy. So I've given you all of the pages of that, and I even gave you this page. I thought this was really cool. It says, Vayar Yisrael et Mitzrayim met et Vayar Yisrael et Mitzrayim met al Sfat Hayam, and it says, Israele vide gli Egiziani periti sulla riva del mare. So the Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the banks of the sea. And that's at the end of the book. I just thought it was kind of cool to see that. And I thought we would do a little bit of the Passover stuff and the Purim stuff in ways that we use our language for that. So, don't do that. I almost said quit instead of this. All right, so I stopped my share and I'm going back to, I can take away my spotlight. I can go back to gallery view. You have to go back to gallery view yourself if you want. But that was, a little bit of a journey into some Jewish languages. There are so many more languages that we didn't talk about. There are so many more things we could have done. We could have, I could have either drilled you for some more Yiddish that I know you know, or I thought about more Yiddish things. I thought about some more Hebrew things. But that's as far as we got. We're at 7 o'clock. So I'm going to